afternoon for a talk about something that's been top of mind for all of us, I think, in the industry, tariffs. And as many of you know, tariffs have reemerged as a serious concern across our industry. And oftentimes it's framed as a threat to profitability. It's framed as a threat across stability. But today we want to take a little bit of a different perspective as we talk about tariffs. So really this session is our attempt to share a little bit more about how we think we can look at tariffs as both a challenge, but also an opportunity. So rather than reacting defensively to rising costs and market uncertainty, we'll walk through some practical and proactive strategies that we as CI professionals can implement right now to protect our profit margins, optimize our operations, and then ultimately build long-term resilience within how we run our businesses. And that can be from short-term pricing adjustments, contractual tools, which I think we'll talk about a little bit more that will be very interesting for you to hear about, and then also smarter inventory management. And overall, there's real opportunity for those that are willing to adapt with intention. And we think the intention part is what's critical. Taking action, being intentional, being proactive gives you more control in the situation. So we're excited to share a phased roadmap that can strengthen your bottom line, not just during this moment, but well into the future. And for those of you that don't know who Daisy is, at Daisy, we're building a beloved brand in home technology through our national network of corporate and franchise locations. If you want to learn more about us, you can find more on daisyco.com. So let's dive in and meet our team that'll be talking today. So we've got myself. My name is Brian Wiersma. I lead franchise operations for Daisy. We've got Mallory Craig-Karim, who's our general counsel at Daisy. And then we've got Mark Peterson, who's the owner of Daisy Sarasota. And then we've also got Mike Berry, who recently joined the Daisy team at the end of January, early February. He was the president of Millennium Systems, and we've enjoyed getting to know Mike and his team and appreciate him joining us today. So a couple of logistical things for those that are attending. We do have the question and answer feature turned on. So if you would like to submit a question, we'll do our best to try to respond to those questions at the end. If we can't get to all the questions, we'll follow up afterward and respond to those as we can. And then also anybody that's attending, if you registered, you'll receive a link to the recording of this video to review afterwards. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Mallory to get things started.
Thanks so much, Brian. And we'd like to thank all of you who are joining us this afternoon, especially on a Friday. So something we need to look at right now is how to improve our short-term profitability, right? So one of the most immediate, tangible steps we as CI professionals can take is implementing a 5% tariff surcharge on all new contract proposals. Something that we want to emphasize is that the 5% surcharge should not just be on one piece of the proposal in the contract, right? We're talking about 5% on the entire contract. And, some people have an adverse reaction to this initially, thinking this is kind of like price gouging or whatnot. What we want to emphasize today, and what we're going to be emphasizing during this presentation, is that this is actually about protecting your margins in a clear, consistent, and justified way, because tariffs are real costs, right? And by addressing them up front, we ensure that we're not left absorbing supplier increases out of pocket. At the same time, this is really an opportunity to build trust through transparency, because when clients see that there's a structured line item surcharge rather than some hidden markup, it reinforces our credibility, right? So we're showing clients that we're being fair while also being prepared. That's one of our big messages today, is we need to be fair while also being prepared. So that clarity not only recovers cost, but it can strengthen our client relationships. one of the other short-term steps we should take in our industry, right, is optimizing our supply chain, right? It sounds simple, and it is one of the most critical things we can do to protect ourselves in these more unstable market times. How can we do that? Okay. Talk to your suppliers, right? Suppliers have manufacturer representatives for exactly this reason. What we don't want to do is wait for those suppliers and those supplier reps to come and talk to us, right? And just bringing us information, reactively. What we're suggesting we do today is reach out proactively and ask our suppliers directly how tariffs, both announced and potential tariffs, will affect our supply chain. So that's the first question, is we need to reach out and open that line of communication. But we need to dig deeper, right? So we need to ask them, what specific actions are those suppliers, your suppliers, taking to mitigate the impacts of tariffs, right? Do they have a plan, or are they reacting on the fly, right? All of that is information that's really helpful for us to know as partners with those suppliers. So that is also going to help us quickly separate those proactive partners from those who are just going to put your business and your profits at risk. So when you're having those conversations, the key needs to be, how are they protecting you? Are they offering any buffer, or is it pretty clear that they're just passing costs along? So we advocate that you use those conversations not just to assess risk, but also to improve your position, right? This is an opportunity to look at, like, what are your strategic purchase options? How can you renegotiate payment terms or better forecasting support from your suppliers and their reps? These discussions, we see them as really the launch point for building a more resilient and cost-effective supply chain strategy. So the next point, as we've hinted at on the next slide, is elevating our pricing practices, right? And what's an easy way we can do that, right? It's in our contracts. This is actually a big part of why I'm talking to you today, is because I'm a contract lawyer. So pricing truly is one of the most powerful tools we have to protect profitability, especially in a market where tariffs and other cost drivers can change very quickly. So a one-size-fits-all model is not going to work for us anymore. Instead, what we can do is implement strategic pricing structures that reflect the real complexity of our projects and our cost inputs. So by building smart contractual provisions into our deals, we then have the protection to cover unexpected cost increases and avoid having to eat those expenses later on. So our mindset is, we're not just going to, pass on the tariff costs. We need to design pricing and contract strategies that help us stay ahead of market volatility and protect our bottom line and deliver consistent value to our clients, right? Because at the end of the day, our client relationships are what we all care so much about. So we're going to give you on the next slide some language that you can use practically to put into your contracts, right? So strategy is really important. Now let's make sure that we have structures in place through strong contractual provisions to really empower us. This language here that's shown on the left of the screen is what gives us that flexibility, so that when market conditions shift, whether it's tariffs, duties, labor costs, supply chain disruptions, that we have, a proactive tool that we can use to protect against those factors. So, and again, I want to emphasize this because I don't want it to get lost. When we're talking about these provisions and this 5% surcharge, we are talking about a surcharge on the full proposal and the full project, not just one piece of the project. So let's read this together. This is what we suggest you include in your client contracts on a go-forward basis. So we say, if after the effective date, and we're talking about the effective date of the contract, I think the provision may have just gotten pulled down, but I'll read it out loud to you. So we say, if after the effective date, any change in law, regulation, government order, trade restriction, i.e. tariffs, right? Market condition or other unforeseen circumstance beyond the company's control, materially increases its costs or renders performance commercially unreasonable, the company may, at its discretion, and then we're going to give 4 options that you can implement. Okay. So the first one is adjust pricing by up to 5%, on the whole project. That's your first line of defense, right? You have the option to increase 5% without a change order, without going back and having conversations with the client. You have that 5% right. The second sub provision you're going to include is you're going to say in your contract that you have the right to modify the scope of supply to accommodate changes in availability or cost structures. The other thing you're going to want to make sure that you put in that contract provision is you will also have the right to substitute alternative products, right, based on price or availability. And then the last option you want to put in your toolkit is you want to have the right to terminate the affected portion of the contract. So say, you just truly can't financially make something work, given the current market, given supply chain disruptions, it's not economically feasible. You have the right to say, hey, I won't be able to do X portion of this overall project. So and we can send you this verbiage after the call. We'll send everyone that registered, this deck with this language, which you'll sometimes see as a change of law or a change of circumstance provision. What we're really talking about in using this language is maintaining viability, right? Whether that means, applying a modest price adjustment, modifying scope, substituting more cost-effective products, or in rare cases, terminating part of the contract. We are ensuring that there is a clear and fair framework in place. So you're protected, your partners are protected, our clients have expectations set for them. So everyone is given the options if the landscape suddenly shifts. And I'd like to take a moment, since we have the pleasure of Mike and Mark joining us today, to ask them in their practical experience, how can folks in the CI industry revise contracts to be more adaptable, in addition to this one provision?
Well, hi, I'm Mike Berry. I'm going to say that what Mallory has given us is an opportunity to bring up this conversation in a way that's respectful, has integrity, and is honest. If we bring it up to the client, without hiding it, it's right out there in the open. Hey, listen, here's an item we have to talk about. It's going to leave the opportunity for us to adjust things later on. The client's going to be aware of it. He's going to respect us for giving him the notice up front that this may occur. So budgets are the hardest thing to overcome in a client's mind. I think this right here gives us the opportunity to bring up a hard topic and come across as a winner.
I think you're on mute, Mark. Let me see if I can. There you go.
Got it. This is Mark Peterson, Daisy, Sarasota. We have a slightly different situation here in Sarasota. Most of our contracts are with custom home builders, and unfortunately, when those contracts are signed, it is kind of tough to make those modifications. But so what we have done is kind of worked more or less on the new contracts that are coming out and having an open discussion with our home builders in terms of passing that information on down to customers. And most of the work that we're doing to combat these effects of the tariffs are more or less done on the inventory side. And I think we'll be talking a little bit more about that, what we can be done. But the discussion is coming about, and it does give us an opportunity to be able to talk to that with our builders as the tariff situation continues to come about. I really wish there were ways to try to go back. The only tool that we really have at our disposal on contracts that have been issued under a PO is the change order process. So my recommendation, and we've done this, is when you do submit a change order, is really look at the work that you're doing, the products that you're offering, and then go to alternatives that may help alleviate some of those tariff issues. Word of advice is, if you do have contracts in place, work the change orders to try to get those things in. And as you get new contracts, to be able to put those prices in, but put them in, bury them in the price of the project, of the task. We've talked to a few home builders, and by singling those prices out may not be the best idea. So going forward, go ahead and put that pricing adjustment in, include them in the price. As far as the ongoing contracts, work those change orders to help alleviate some of those tariff pricing increases.
Thank you so much, Mark and Mike. And that's a really important point, right? Like, we're talking about forward-looking contracts, but we should be mindful of what options we have for existing contracts, such as change orders, and really applying a lot of this, these points and what we're discussing today, to see if those can be adapted to existing contracts. What we want to emphasize, right, with this slide in particular, is that all we're doing by putting these provisions in and thinking strategically about our contracts is that we are taking back, right, some control by giving ourselves that flexibility. And we have the optionality, right, to like pull that lever when we need to. And so the way that I see that contract provision, which we just discussed, is you get to pull the lever that works for you. You have a choice of levers. You don't have to pull a lever. You have no obligation to, put forward a 5% surcharge. You have no obligation to substitute a product. But what you don't want to do is not include that contract provision. And then later on, you are at the mercy of supply chain swings, right? We're giving ourselves, by adapting our contracts, we're giving ourselves a playbook for how to pivot quickly and maintain forward momentum without compromising on outcomes or margins, right? Because profitability is still our most important tool for sustaining our businesses. All right, so beyond the contract piece, what are other steps that we can take? Okay, this slide is all about walking your warehouse, right? We need to optimize our existing inventory, right? Because tariffs are driving up the cost of new products. What can we do now is take a closer look at what we already have on hand. So a smart strategic inventory assessment helps uncover hidden value within our existing inventory. So parts or products that can either be deployed, right? Go use those. That way we can avoid new purchases, or, we can even sell them, right? Convert that into cash to strengthen our financial flexibility. This is really about shifting from reactive buying to intentional strategic utilization. So we can use this moment to rethink inventory strategy as a whole on a go-forward basis. That could mean adjusting purchasing patterns, holding only what we need, improving inventory turnover to support a more leaner, more profitable operation. Because in uncertain times, like, our existing assets are often our biggest untapped advantage. So this approach helps us use our inventory to protect margins and cash flow without sacrificing project delivery. And okay, so what are we going to do now? We're going to really use that inventory. We've assessed what we have. We're going to use that inventory to our advantage. We don't want to underestimate that value that we have sitting on our shelves, right? Because pre-tariff inventory stock, right, It gives us margin control. It gives us pricing leverage. It gives us liquidity if we manage it proactively. So it's not just about having stock on the shelves. It's about thinking about this inventory as a cost-controlled asset that gives you pricing leverage others may not have if they're not looking at their inventory, if they're not doing routine audits. So that existing inventory doesn't have a tariff impact, right? So it has a built-in price advantage over newly imported goods, right? So what we want to do is, like I said, regular audits. We want to reprice our contracts and our projects based on current market rates. Okay, so if you have inventory that has normally been X price, now if tariffs are delaying supply chain for that product, if that product's prices are going up because of it, we should change the rate of that product, right? So we just want to be creative in our approach to moving stock, especially slower moving stock, right? Too. So we can pair, less desirable products with more desirable products, thinking about deals and packages. What we really want to do is just be smart about our inventory management to reduce our need for, forward purchases. And what else can we do? Well, if we know our inventory, right, we can delay new purchases. We can smooth out cash flow. We can operate, more generally from a stronger financial position, while others who aren't thinking strategically about their inventory, may be scrambling to adjust to rising costs. So what we want to do is, just be tactful, right, to maintain our pricing power and protect our margins by being smart with our inventory. This is really, something that we've learned a lot from in terms of past disruptions, right? We look back at what did we learn during COVID, okay? The companies and the businesses that thrived were not necessarily, the biggest. They were actually the most adaptable. So they were the ones that acted quickly, that embraced flexibility, and rethought their processes to stay ahead of disruption. And what's great about this moment is we have that same opportunity right now with tariffs. So tariffs, right, they're the latest stress test. And like COVID, they give us an opportunity to strengthen our systems from the inside out. So what we believe and what we have seen is the real differentiator will be mindset. So companies that act now, that change their contracts, that are mindful of their inventory, that talk to their suppliers, that strategize with their suppliers, that strategize with their inventory, those are the ones that are going to set themselves up for long-term success, as opposed to other businesses that maybe are just reacting, right, instead of being proactive. So, to kind of bring it all together, right? This slide outlines like a phased approach, essentially, for implementing the strategies we've discussed. So the first step is to address the near-term risks by updating our contracts, right, with the provision we discussed, and that we'll share with the slides. That includes adding the 5% tariff surcharge option and initiating supplier conversations, really to ensure alignment and to build your partnerships, to also differentiate with whom you should have those partnerships. These immediate actions are going to obviously help stabilize margins, and they're going to lay the groundwork for longer term improvements. Now, from there, our focus shifts to optimizing inventory and cash flow, right? We have to make the most of what we already have, while also planning strategically, right, for what's ahead. And then in the medium term, the goal is to kind of restructure and diversify our supply chain where we can, so that we can reduce future vulnerability and build in resilience. So that kind of goes back to understanding whether or not your supply chain partners are those proactive thinkers that we need in these times, rather than just partners that are going to pass costs along and just be transactional and not budge and not communicate and not adapt themselves. So our feeling is that this phased approach allows ourselves as CI professionals to act quickly without losing sight of long-term gains. And then some final thoughts we can leave you with regard, supplier evaluations and communication strategies. So, what this slide does is provide you with some points that you can use in terms of your conversations and analysis with your, supplier reps. So, like we talked about, not all suppliers respond to disruption the same way. And those differences really matter in times like, right now where we're going to have some market volatility. And these are all factors that you can use to evaluate your suppliers, especially their willingness to collaborate, right? So, warning signs, red flags with your suppliers are going to be those that kind of provide vague updates that, kind of are reactive in posture, that aren't concerned with your timelines and your margins. You really want to use these factors to think through, those parties with which you're depending on for your supply chain. And then communication strategy with clients, right? Because our clients at the end of the day are what make our businesses. So how we communicate tariff-related changes may make or break client trust. And what we feel at Daisy is that transparency builds trust. Okay, so instead of reworking pricing in the background, we are going to clearly call it out, right? We're going to put it as a line item in our contract, like we talked about earlier. We want to show honesty. We want to show credibility. And we also want to help clients understand that the increase, it's not arbitrary, right? It is tied to a specific external cost. The contractual provision we looked at specified a number of situations that are out of our control, right? That we have to handle. And so that's exactly why we would need to implement some of those levers that we talked about. When we're having those conversations with clients, right? That's also an opportunity to reinforce the value that we're providing. So we use this moment in conversation with our clients to highlight what are our proactive strategies, right? Talk about your inventory utilization. Talk about those conversations with your supplier reps. We want to talk to them about how we are doing work proactively that's going to directly benefit them and prevent us from having to use the most extreme levers. So what we want to do is we're not positioning ourselves just as a vendor, but as a stable, forward-thinking partner who is prepared, who is dependable, who is focused on continuity, even in challenging times, right? And so, Mike and Mark, are you willing to speak a little bit about how these client communications have gone for you both?
Yes. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Mike.
Easy to do.
This technology has me baffled. No, I'm just kidding. So we've been in business for 26 years as Millennium Systems Design, and not long ago, we used to cover all our prices in our product. So in other words, if a product was $100, but we had any other fees in there, we would charge $110 for that product and kind of hide all of our fees in there. Not long ago, a few years ago, maybe even longer than 5 years ago, we initiated a transparency policy that says we have a 7% project management fee. We have a 3.5% administrative fee and a 2% shipping fee. And I'll be honest, 50% of the people right off the bat just accepted what we wrote in there as the cost of doing business. And they understand that ours is a complex industry and those things are necessary from project management, all of that. And then something has to pay for that to keep your business running smooth. So the 25% of those people questioned it with a good elevator pitch, knowing exactly that you're not trying to gouge anybody. You're being honest, and you're telling them the cost of doing business, and you're partnering with your client to make it all happen. Those 25% came on board very quickly. The other 25% may have been a struggle. They may have held off on doing projects. They may have cut back a little bit. but they ended up coming around as well too. So all in all, the process is not as daunting as we think it is. There are people out there expecting this. You're earning your money. You're doing it right for the customer. You're making sure that you're here for them to take care of it a year from now, 10 years from now, to make sure their systems are going to work. This whole thing is about your partnership with your client.
That's great.
Thanks, Mike. Here at Daisy Sarasota, as I mentioned before, most of our strategy has been centered around getting prepared for the future on the inventory side. And we've been passing those messages to our customers. And for us internally, probably the first thing that was kind of an easy decision was to be sure that we have enough cable to last us throughout the year. So that as we pull the cable in, just about every job requires a good amount of cable. So not only do we get the cable pricing at today's rates, we are able to raise those rates as we go through our projects and to help cover, again, some of these tariff costs. We also looked at really who was our top manufacturers and the products that they served us, and then compared it to what we're going to be doing in the future. Obviously, we're not going to go and take every line item out of our inventory and stock up on it. So we really looked at the top 20, 30% of our inventory items that are going to be used in the future. And we're putting them in inventory right now. So we pass those things down to our customers. We're telling them we're taking a more proactive approach, and that, of course, there is going to be some increases, but we're trying to take action to mitigate those price increases. The other issue is that when we talk to our customers about the pricing of items that you might be able to switch out to do a product swap, you most of the time end up on the back end having to do a lot more work. And I'm just going to bring an example that's actually hit us the other day. When we tried to scale down some video distribution, we went to 2 units to extract video and audio, but as it turns out, we spent more time trying to figure out making the 2 parts work than it would be on the original part. So it is a two-edged sword, but I think that the message is to the customers that, we're working hard to kind of keep the prices down, but at the same time, there will be some price increases. And for the most of our customers, as Mike says, they are expecting it. So it is there on the table. We have communicated the message that we're doing everything that we can, but expect that prices will be going up in the future.
I think that's exactly right. Is being clear, being honest, right? Being transparent, having those open communications, because that also really ultimately builds trust. And so our message today is, this current tariff situation, it's not just a challenge. People are panicked. People are scrambling. People are stressed. People are concerned. People are anxious, right? Because we don't know exactly what the landscape is going to look like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months from here. Our message with these strategies is really that this is a chance to build, both a stronger and a smarter business. And one of my favorite quotes, from Churchill, as he put it, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I love that mentality. I love that sentiment because it is exactly right. And it's exactly applicable to what we're talking about today and what we're navigating. So our message to you and to everyone at Daisy is that this is our moment to lead. The companies that move with strategy and intention today will come out on the other side more resilient, more profitable, and far better positioned to navigate whatever comes next. So take this moment, take a deep breath, and know that, by implementing some of these strategies, we are going to be okay. And most importantly, we're going to maintain our profit margins. And so I just want to thank, there's a number of Daisy team members behind the scene who have been collecting questions and working on the tech. I'd like to thank all of them for their support today. And hopefully we have time for one or two questions, and those questions that we don't get to, we can send as a follow-up in correspondence to those registrants for today's webinar. So Mark and Mike, I'm going to ask you to join us again for some ending thoughts. And we can probably turn off the PowerPoint. I defer to Daisy Tech. So one of the questions we received says, what are specific strategies integrators can use to stay competitive during tariff-related disruptions? So kind of in addition to what we've touched on today, I would think.
I could say simply be prepared. I think this whole, and I know I'm speaking for myself here, is that we haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to the tariffs. April 2nd is just right around the corner. And that's the date that things are going to start taking effect. So this has been an eye opener for this organization that, we were a little behind the eight ball, but now that we're faced with it, that you need to take action today, that you need to prepare. And I say again that, our mechanism right now, as most of our contracts are already put in place, we have the change orders that we can get the new pricing in and try to expand those as much as possible when we do have opportunities to switch out products. But again, look at what you're selling. Look at what the impact of those tariffs, as you know them, on those products are. And, take the top 20% and stock those items up to protect your pricing. So that's my advice to all the custom integrators, that don't wait till it's too late. Start now. Look at your inventory and prepare.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, if COVID taught us anything, it was how to be flexible, how to overcome adverse situations. I'm sure I'm not the only one that had products that we couldn't get a hold of, and we had to spin on a dime to find new products that fit a client. Talk to the client about, yes, I know we sold you this product, but this other product will do exactly what we need to do. And then you have to learn how to express, there's a reason we didn't pitch it to you up front, but we're pitching it to you now. So there's a lot of complexities we have to overcome when we run into these situations. But I think if anybody went through that successfully, that we became a better industry because of the flexibility and the adversaries we had to overcome. And I don't see this being too much different. I actually see us being able to plan a little better on this, whether it's, get to know your vendor, be more diverse with your vendors and make sure you have alternatives. So if Crestron comes in with a 25% increase because of tariffs, but Control 4 has a 6% increase, maybe that's a good option to offer a client a different product. Same thing with, the speaker manufacturer. All of our products have other vendors out there. We just have to vet it to figure out what could work. And like I said, we sometimes need to move on a dime to make sure it's there. And if you're going to use more vendors, well, you have to train your staff. Your staff has to be not only trained on the product, but they have to know how to approach these questions. You have to teach them the hard questions the clients are going to ask and give them the answers to get out there and get the elevator pitch down. So you know what you're doing. Become the expert on tariffs, just like you are on your electronics.
I completely agree. I think that's so fundamental, and that's really wonderful advice. And I think that just touches on a little bit this next, and I think it'll be our final based on time question, which is, are there risks in adapting too quickly to new vendors or unfamiliar products due to the tariffs?
Mark, I'll start on that one.
Okay.
Only because I'm just going to say there's definite risks in that. And again, I'll go back to the COVID. I mean, I don't know how many of the people out there were working with Crestron during COVID. We couldn't get any lighting control, and we had probably 7 homes that were waiting to, close and people move in, but they couldn't because we didn't have lighting controls. And by code, they can't close on the house. So we had to move over to a different product. the Vantage. We know the product's great. We know both of the products are great. What we did not know was that they weren't great together. So that was a learning experience and a very costly learning experience that we couldn't get Crestron home working with Vantage the way it was all promised to. So yeah, are there risks? There is, and you have to, but I think COVID taught us how to prepare and investigate those risks prior to them becoming crisis. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think it's the exact same thing. I pointed out to that example earlier where we took two pieces of video gear to extract audio and come to find out that we couldn't make them to work. So we spent more labor time trying to call vendors and understand what the problems are. We have a demo room here where we test our products, and we've got most of our suites down to, we know things that work together. We know what to expect. In the AV world, there's always the unwritten, the unwritten items that you have to check that aren't in the manual. And you either get it through osmosis, experience, and you make it work. But there is a training curve and time to understand what the issues are. So there's definitely risk. And it's not just the tariff situation, but at any time in the AV world, I think that's what separates us from IT. IT is pretty much predictable. AV is not. And then when you slap on this situation, it just compounds the problem. So test it first before you go out in the field if you're going to make those changes, because it will happen.
And I'm going to add one other thing, Mallory, if you don't mind. And it is about the fact that we should vet our equipment. We should make sure we test it all. Unfortunately, we cannot always do that when we're in a time crunch and we can't get a product or that's priced itself out of the market. So I'm going to do a quick little daisy pitch, and that we are not alone. There are so many integrators in this circle that maybe we haven't used that product, but somebody here has. Somebody else has come up to that. So now that we have a network of very experienced and wise technicians out there, programmers, et cetera, we have a better opportunity using diverse vendors without running into the issues we ran into while we were alone.
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that. I think that's wonderful. And that's exactly our point with this webinar, is that we are a community of, CI professionals. And so let's utilize our networks, connect with, the Daisy folks that you've gotten to meet today. So our message, Mike, Mark, I think what we're really saying here is, we need to stay nimble, but build in guardrails. And so it's just been a pleasure to speak with you both today, to speak with the Daisy team, and to have all of you join us this Friday afternoon. And for some final remarks, I'd like to introduce our CEO and amazing co-founder, Hagan Kappler.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the team for the presentation and to everyone for attending. I am blown away by the awesome response that we've had here. Just goes to show, as Mallory and Mike were just talking about, the power of the network. So just for a little bit more background on Daisy really quickly and on this team. So Mallory is our general counsel, as you just heard, but I think it's important to know that at Daisy, we all wear a lot of different hats, and Mallory, looks at her role, I think, not to speak for you, Mallory, but as an advisor, and she shares kind of help and on issues like this with all of our branches and our team members. So Mallory, thanks for that help and advice. As you just heard, Mike Berry, he's one of our newer members of the team. He just joined us recently when we acquired Millennium Systems Design, which is an integrator in Orlando, Florida. A really high quality integrator. They've been in the Orlando market for decades. Mike is an incredible leader, and he's got a super impressive team behind him. So really happy to have Mike on his team and on our team. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. Mark Peterson. Mark was, I think, the third branch to join, our second franchisee, and that office in Sarasota has been just stellar. And so we've really enjoyed your leadership. So thanks for sharing both of those perspectives. I think that, and then Brian, who kicked us off, he's our head of operations and also helps on our franchise development. Brian and I have been working together for a really long time, and just always enjoy hearing from Brian. I think one of the things I just wanted to talk about just really quickly was how important we think of operations and also helps on our franchise development. Brian and I have been working together for a really long time, and just always enjoy hearing from Brian. I think one of the things I just wanted to talk about just really quickly was how important we think transparency is here at Daisy and in the industry in general. And so that was, in addition to what the team was just talking about in terms of the power of the network, we also think, sharing ideas, getting together, and not just ideas, but actually sharing the actions that we're all taking is really important. And then talking about the impact that they're having. At Daisy, we try a lot of things on. Not everything works, but some things really do work. And once they do, we do want to share that. And not everybody can be a part of Daisy, but that doesn't mean we can't share, the benefits and what we're seeing out there to try to lift the whole industry up. So to the extent you're interested in learning more, or if there's more that you want to hear or you have other questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the team. And I think that's the key point, is just making sure that we want to make sure that we're action oriented, we're data oriented, and that's coming from a place of actually trying things out, learning from those things, and then when something works, we kick it into gear. A lot of our team comes from outside the industry, and then we've got leaders like Mike and Mark and many others who come from inside the industry. And I think that's been a really powerful element of Daisy. So this idea of a 5% surcharge, for example, to get ahead of the tariff opportunity, which is really how we see it, that's something that has worked really well for many members of our team who come from big companies and other industries, and also from other home services areas. We saw this in the home cleaning space, for example, and in pest control, where during really high inflation, we were adding, fuel surcharges, for example. Customer understood that it was potentially for a short time period, but it really helped not only protect our team members from potential impact on costs, but actually improved on the bottom line. So this is one where we thought, geez, we have a great idea here. Want to make sure we're getting it out in front of the industry. So with that, just want to say thank you so much for joining, and look forward to continued conversations. This is the first of many more webinars in our future. So we hope that you'll stay tuned. I know that podcasts are like cooler than webinars, but we're really on a webinar mode right now, and so ours will be info rich, and we'll be sharing that. Anything else that we need to share, Brian, or are we good to go to close this out?
I think we're okay to close out, Hagan.
Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll look forward to talking to you all soon.